last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host and your friend, Rashid. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in my friend, who is the host of Silk and Steel, a heavyweight podcast, my guy, Carl Zah. How's it going today, my friend?
Hi, Rishi. How are you? Long time
man,
no
I'm
see.
doing better. Hey, thank you, Carl, for the well wishes behind the scenes. You, as I always told you, you were my mother's favorite guest, my daughter's favorite guest, and so I thought it would be the best to have you back on the first show with a guest, because in memory of my mom, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Carl, let's get into it. Before we tackle a lot of stuff that's going on in the Asia Pacific, before we tackle what's going on with the U.S. trying to stop the Belt and Road Initiative, let's go into your perspective of what's going on in the Middle Eastern area, because that's getting blocked out of the way with the steady flow of Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Ukraine.
Well, Trump just recently visited the Gulf country that, again, was being hailed as a great victory by the MAGA crowd, because now, okay, first of all, all the pageantry, Trump loved it. They flatter his ego, but what's the real reason Trump visited all the Gulf country is because he needs their money. Unlike what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said. Scott Bessent says, we're the trade deficit country. They need our money. We are the consumer society. They need us. No. United States need foreign investment, foreign money. This is why Trump goes to the Middle East, because all these oil-rich countries that have built a large dollar surplus from their export of oil and gas. And Trump now is trying to put together this boondoggle project called Stargate. This is a $500 billion investment into building AI infrastructure in the United States. Now, where is he going to get that $500 billion? U.S. is government not coming up with a $500 billion. They expect the Arabs from the Gulf to come up with a $500 billion. This is what they're talking about. And well, we'll have to see. Like I already saw some Trump supporters. One of the tech bros, Chamath, he already said, "Oh, this is Trump just created the American version of Belt and Road Initiative. It's to counter the China's Belt and Road Initiative 1.0. This is a 2.0 version, and when there's all this oil sheiks gonna put money in the United States, there's gonna be left nothing for China. But this is just for public consumption. What they don't realize is next week, in fact, in the 26th, all the Gulf monarchies, all the people that Trump went to meet, they're gonna travel to Malaysia. They're gonna meet with ASEAN and the Chinese Premier Li Qiang. So the Gulf Arab countries, they're hedging their bets. They're placing a very delicate balancing game. So what they will play up China when they come to United States, like, hey, look, we have alternatives to turn to. We can price our oil in yuan, and then then after they meet with Trump, they go to China, because they are the one trying to get better of both sides, get better deal from both sides here. And this so again, this is the real reason Trump is going to the Middle East. On the other hand, there's Israel. Israel wants to carry out ethnic cleansing in Gaza. That's what their stated aim is, and they want to start a war with Iran. And Israel cannot start war with Iran by itself. It's not capable. So it wants to drag United States to start a war with Iran. That's why you're seeing all these editorials coming out in mainstream media now, how United States need to send Iran a message. Iran must not have nuclear weapons. But the Iranians said very clearly, we're going to continue to stockpile and refine uranium with or without a deal with the United States. Like at this point, after all these threats, I mean, it only makes sense for Iran to go nuclear. United States is not threatening to North Korea because North Korea has nukes. They did go after Saddam and Gaddafi after they had picked up the nuclear program. So the lesson for Iran is very clear. They need nukes to protect themselves. And the deal that the Trump now is floating about to stop nuclear, it's basically the same deal that Obama came up with, and then Trump himself tore up. He's coming now. He's going back to the drawing board, coming up with the same deal. Now it's up to the Iranians to decide whether they can trust Donald Trump's government or the successful or the next U.S. administration to stick with. So this is where we are.
So, with that said, Carl, when we look at the whole picture with Iran, why is Iran entertaining this, especially knowing that the United States really has it out to nip Iran in the bud, to weaken Russia, to weaken China, to weaken India and Pakistan, and to balkanize and make those nations in North Africa and West Asia docile and keep Israel as the most dominant power? Why is Iran entertaining that, especially when America is trying to force Iran to throw in its missile program, its drone program, and everything else tied to the so-called nuclear agreement?
Well, I think Iran is trying to show the world, look, we are not the obstacle to peace. We are open to talk. We are ready to reach a deal to prevent a war. It's the U.S. that's been the unreasonable one, right? I mean, I think that by choosing to participate in the talks, Iran is showing its willingness to conciliate, to reach a peace agreement. But as we can all see, the U.S. is the one that's making unreasonable demands, and then there are segments in the U.S. media and U.S. Government that's making the noise for making war against Iran. I think like there's very little appetite, I think, around the world for a war with Iran. The only ones entertaining these thoughts are Israel and Israeli supporter in Washington. So Iran is doing all this to show, hey, we're not the aggressor here. We're not the one that's provoking tensions. We're trying to work with everyone to have peace.
So we see there was an article came out. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick for you. And this should have really had heads turning. And it says BRICS. Tanzania officially bans the U.S. dollar. And in the first paragraph, it says, taking a leaf straight from the BRICS playbook, Tanzania announced an official ban on the U.S. dollar and local transactions. The bank of, let's see, something just popped up. The bank, hold on one second, everybody. We're getting hit by some virus or something. Hold on. It would happen as soon as we're doing this. Okay, here it is. The Bank of Tanzania has put a blanket ban on all foreign currencies and local transactions, and only the Tanzanian shillings is made legal tender. The ban comes after an influx of foreign currency circulated the market for local transactions, leaving the TZS behind. So Do you believe, because this is not the first nation that did it, it's just one of the first nations that it has been announced in the last few months. But if you look, you see a lot of nations, China being one, quietly dumping US dollar, quietly exchanging the currency with other nations. And then you see small African nations doing this and Latin American nations doing this. We know that the world does not have an appetite for war, but we have a lunatic, crazed superpower that is losing its position and its power and in its influence. What do you think this will lead to?
Well, first of all, Trump has done his best to sabotage the dollar and the dollar hegemony. He, this whole trade war liberation day business. This brought the value of dollar down. That made the interest rate go up, and everyone is in the world realize like, hey, we don't want to be holding the bag, because there's the only way for U.S. out of this predicament. The predicament being $37 trillion of national debt, and the interest rate rising, which means the United States had to pay more on the debt, pay more interest to service its debt. The only way for U.S. To out of this predicament is devaluation. They're gonna print money, a lot more money to inflate away the debts. And the rest of the world, they don't want to be holding the bag, because if they hold the dollar reserve, it's their earnings, their saving that's going to be whittled away by Trump policy of money printing. I mean, they're doing the rational choice, which is moving away from the dollar. This is the crux of I never claimed that Trump knows what he's doing, but he has contradictory goals. His one goal is, his Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, said, we got to defend the dollar hegemony. We got to defend the dollar status as a reserve currency. At the same time, they're doing everything to sabotage the dollar. They're devaluing the dollar. That's just pushing people away more and more from using the dollar. And on top of that, they're using financial sanctions against everyone, China, US, and the conclusion for the rest of the world is now it's unavoidable. It's the time to make Plan B. Time to make Plan B to better not tie our national fortune to this sinking ship.
Phobos in the chat says they have to print starting ASAP because there are $7 trillion of bonds that have to get borrowed this year. It's either QE or crash the economy, which is right. But it's amazing that you've come to this discussion on this matter here, because there's a clip that I had. They were discussing this exact thing. And here is something that most people miss out on it. And it's a short clip. I want to get your take on it right after this. So I'm gonna play this real quick.
This downgrade basically shows that the U.S.'s debt is rising, and with the rising interest rate, especially interest rate payments on the treasuries, on these SS balance, reserve balances, what this means is that all this interest payments inject a lot of money into the U.S. economy in the private sector, especially for the bondholders and other banks that hold those SS reserves. And so this is really a very negative, regressive wealth transfer, from the public budgets to these bondholders, these very wealthy individuals. Not to mention, we know right now the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill is being discussed at the House, and a lot of it comes with a lot of tax benefits that would go to the rich, the top income earners, with some spending cuts that would affect Medicaid programs and so on and so forth, according to the Tax Foundation. Again, a lot of these tax benefits would only enrich certain groups of corporations and large, wealthy individuals. And yet we're seeing low-income families, they're not getting much of this tax benefits,
right,
but they're facing the burden of these rising, tariff rates. Overall, it's not a matter of insolvency. The U.S.'s, government is spending dollars and incur debt in the dollars that they always have the means to pay for, right?
Yeah.
They will not run out of dollar bills. And yet, I think the problems are really consequential when it comes to distributional impacts, and also in terms of the really needs of the economy, where the people are going to bear the burden of these tax payments and also the interest payments.
So, a friend of mine, Gregory Manarino, he was talking about that. He said a lot of people think that Trump is against the Fed, but Trump has become the Fed's best friend. And with this printing of money, it is a major transfer of wealth from the middle and poor class to the wealthy class, and the burden is placed then on the poor class. So, what do you have to say about what her take on it, and your take on it?
I mean, that's exactly right, because in U.S. we always practice capitalism for the poor and the socialism for the rich. I mean, that's the way it has always been, right? I mean, I call the U.S. government by the all the oligarchs, by the oligarchs for the oligarchs, and this is it's the government itself funnel as a tool to funnel money from everybody into the pocket of the 1%. And she hit the nail right on the head. She says this is a distribution problem, and this is gonna make the inequality even worse, because when the government print money, initially it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good for the people who get the money first, who get to spend the money first before the price start rising, right? And guess who are the people who get the money first is not going to be average Joe six-pack from Michigan. The people who get the money first are the big banks, the big businesses who are able to take out large loans, and it's going to be the rest of the Americans who will have to share the burden. They are going to share the pain of it's not going to be the Chinese that's going to be eating tariff. Let's just put it that way. It's going to be the American consumers. They're going to have to eat the tariffs, but now they're going to have to eat the price increase caused by inflation as a result of money printing. And this is going to be we're right now at a very early stage, Rishi. Like the real pain hasn't really hit yet. Things are gonna and about Trump and Federal Reserve. I mean, this is why the Trump administration has been yelling at Powell to to print all this time. They're getting impatient. This is but that's how it's always been the plan. The plan was the plan was never to. There's no way they're gonna cut enough government spending to reduce the deficit, because look, they just approved official increase to $1 trillion of military budget. If anything, that's the biggest. The biggest government liability is Social Security, Medicaid, and the Pentagon, right? And of course, they're not cutting the Pentagon. They're not cutting the defenses. They're increasing the defenses and cutting everything else. And so it's the only solution to that is money printing, and that's the so-called the Doge. That's just a window dressing. This is just like it's like cosplay to fool the public, like we're doing something. We're cutting so much. No, like what you cut is not even it won't even make a dent in terms of the budget deficit. But so the only way for them to deal with the debt crisis is going to be to inflate it away, to print money.
And I think that's why more nations should be on the alert for an unhinged empire, because the public announcement of we already knew the budget was over $1 trillion, but to publicly announce it, it means that they're stating to the world that now we're focusing on our military because we've lost the edge in everything else, and we will have to use this military to keep dollar hegemony so that the military can continue to go, because it's one scratches the other back like this. And I think China, the African nations, the Latin American nations, and I believe the Asian nations are more up to speed on this because of the way they're reorienting their economies and how they're inviting Chinese and Russian companies in to invest in education, railway, and all of this stuff. Why do you think that the Middle Eastern nations, some European nations, are slow to adjust and reorient, seeing the empire in such a dire state economically?
Well, I think the Middle East nations are already making the adjustment. Like I mentioned, the Gulf countries, they're going to be in Malaysia next week, and the European countries. I mean, EU has been institutionally captured by Washington for so long. You have people like von der Leyen who have been trained and groomed in Atlantis's institution since their youth. Their main goal is to be the Washington's voice, Washington's spokesperson in Europe. They don't have to be answerable to the European electorates. I saw von der Leyen's like campaign ads. I'm like, wait, who is she? She's running like campaign ads for. She's not getting elected by like average European citizens, right? I mean, like she literally does not have to answer to any of the European electorate. But this is why they got suckered into this proxy war in Ukraine against Russia, which is detrimental to Europeans' own interests because they got cut off to a cheap supply of Russian gas, and now they buy Russian oil and gas with a premium. They just buy it through China and India, and they pay higher price for it, and so they are. Europe, I don't know. Europe is kind of lost case at this point. This is, but I mean, we might see some changes because when Trump did slap tariff on Europe, that kind of made people realize, oh crap, maybe we cannot rely on the United States forever. Like that. This is why even Europe, they went to China and said, let's talk. Let's talk. Let's have a talk to remove all the mutual trade restrictions. This is actually pretty big because a lot of this trade restriction that Europe placed on China started with Trump's first term, and you got added on during Biden's term, and now they're saying, okay, let's forget about that. Let bygone be bygones. Let's do trade because now U.S. is restricting our export to their markets. So I think Europe is going to be a bit slow to come to this realization that they need to pioneer a more independent foreign policy, but I think eventually they will come around.
Mm-hmm. So now as we talk on this issue, let's also address others concerning the situation with the United States. And what I mean by that is I hear a lot of people, a lot of alternative media constantly saying that Trump wants peace. Trump is trying to hammer out peace in Ukraine. Trump wants this. And it just goes over their head that Trump was one of the initiators of the war. And he was the one, and with one swipe of a pen, he could stop the funding. With one swipe of a pen, he could stop the whatever Biden signed going through. He could use an executive order like he's doing in other instances every day, it seemed like. But I want to read something to you because this is absolutely crazy. Let's see. On RT today, there's an article from yesterday, and it says, U.S. should never have intervened in Ukraine, says Trump. Now, when we read this article, I mean, when you hear the headline, oh, yes, Trump is really, really for peace. But most people don't understand it. It's not peace. It's prioritization of imperial goals, because they realize that they have come to a point where the U.S. cannot finance all of these different activities around the globe, and so they have to prioritize the most expedient ones, and they think that China is the most pressing threat to American hegemony. So they're going to not stop the war in Ukraine. What they're going to do is let it smolder so that they can, thinking that they can beat China and double back around with Russia. And I want to read something, Carl, to get your understanding of this. In the article, it says the U.S. president believes Kiev would be better off if the conflict with Moscow had remained a European situation. That was never the case. It was never a European situation. It was always at the behest of America and the American empire. We have audio, we have officials, we have writings that prove that this was of the U.S. design, of the British design. But it goes further and says this: U.S. President Donald Trump has rebuked his predecessor, forgetting that he preceded Joe Biden too. It says, for funneling vast amounts of American taxpayer money into a foreign conflict that should have remained a European situation. Speaking to reporters at the White House following a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday, Trump expressed frustration over the crazy scale of U.S. involvement in the Ukraine conflict. First of all, he can stop it right now with the swipe of a pen, but we can go further. He says, he reiterated that it is not our war, and stressed that this administration is working to end it through diplomacy. This is not our war. This is not my war. I mean, we've got ourselves entangled in something that we should not have been involved in, and we would have been a lot better off, and maybe the whole thing would have been better off, because it can't be much worse. It's a real mess. That is to absolutely put the blame on everybody else and to take the blame off the United States, when we have writings, we have audio recordings, we have video of telling, even books by Obama's mentor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, when he said that to neuter Russia, you separate Ukraine from Russia to prevent it from becoming a global power. And this was a design of think tanks, and it was put into policy with multiple administrations. And how could he just, and people, including the alternative media, overlook that and skip that, when he is putting the blame on everybody but where it should be, and that is the United States?
Well, that's what Trump administration always do, right? It's gaslighting everybody. But they, in their mind, it's not our war. This is like the previous administration's war. The previous administration, which include Trump 1.0. Right, which includes the Trump firster. It's like, no, this is not our war. We just got elected. We just got here. But I mean, like, this is ridiculous. But the thing is, even if I think they do want to wind down the war in Ukraine so they can focus on containing China. Mm-hmm. This is what a lot of the U.S. Think tanks have been proposing to do, but the mistake that Trump is making is he's still trying to negotiate like U.S. is negotiating from a position of strength, which is not true, because Russia already held the upper hand in the battlefield. And it's not up to the United States at this point to dictate terms of peace. Right now, Russia is going to get everything they ask for, or they're just going to take it. So this is a situation. This is not the situation where United States can decide what Russia can have and what Russia cannot have. United States is just not in a position of strength to speak on this issue right now. And this is why when Trump is still in his old, art of the deal, right? When he's trying to like act tough to get a better deal, but that's not going to work with Russia. Russia can seize through that. United States don't hold any cards in this. This is why their so-called peace initiative is failing, because they're still trying to act tough with Russia, trying to get better terms from Russia. But as from Russia's point of view, it's like, it's either we make peace now, or we'll just take more of Ukraine. I mean, like that's your choice. Either we make peace now, and then we stop our advance, or we can talk about a different settlement once we have we cut off the Ukraine from access to Black Sea, and it turns into a rump state. So this is why Ukraine recently has entered into talk with Russia, because they also realize their position is not tenable. United States, well, in a way, Trump is a great peacemaker, because what his tariff war brought together China, Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia. China, Korea, Japan, they have sat down and they say, we're going to do a free trade zone among us, among all the East Asian countries. That would be China, South Korea, Japan, and ASEAN, the Southeast Asian countries. That's a market of 2 billion plus people. Yes. That's huge. And this is all because of Trump, because of Trump's tariff war. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened. So yes, Trump brought East Asia together, and Trump also made EU and China closer. So Trump is a great peacemaker of Eurasia. He brought everybody together, just not in the ways that Trump supporter envisioned. So in a way, yes, Trump is a great peacemaker, just not that's just not an intended consequence.
So what do you think is going on right now in the Ukraine conflict? Vis-a-vis, we see Russia advancing on all points. At every time you turn around, they're advancing. They're taking the village, a city, or whatever. And then you have Zelensky, who they present as this madman, which people don't realize that he can only do so much. And I'm not defending him, but he's a puppet. And the United States calls the shots, and we see it by the negotiation between Russia and the U.S. instead of Russia and only Ukraine. What do you think this is leading us? And do you believe that America will be able to extricate herself from this quagmire? And I would say this mud on her face for losing this in NATO so that she can then try to recalibrate, rearm, and then refocus herself on China.
I think they are United States still, their strategic goal is still to extricate itself from Europe and even from Middle East to refocus on China. I think they're going to work on that. I mean, right now it's more they're hitting some snags in terms of negotiation, because Trump was trying to act tough by sending weapons to Ukraine to show that to show Vladimir Putin that we still have hold cards in our hand. But Russia is not buying that. So I think eventually, just like how Trump backed down from the tariff war, he's going to have to back down in his negotiation with Russia. To give Russia what they want, because Russia don't want a temporary peace. They don't want like a ceasefire, like what they had when they signed the Minsk agreement, right? They don't want a case where you're only to stop this conflict, only to have their opponents to build their military power back up again under NATO and to start the conflict again at some point in the future. That they want a permanent peace settlement. Like a guarantee that NATO will not be in Ukraine. There's not going to be the Russia's soft underbelly is not going to be exposed, and so that's what they're going for. They're not going to go for like some piecemeal, ceasefire that it's just a temporary reprieve from fighting, so Ukraine can stockpile more Western arms, more NATO weapons to carry out the fighting like 2 years, 3 years down the road. I mean, then what's the point? The whole point of the special military operation is to deal with this problem once for all. So Russia is very clear on its strategic goal here, and it's the United States that hasn't been, very, very clear. United States know it wants to extricate, but being Trump, he still want to extract concessions from opponents. That's just his business instinct. He tried to act tough and and try to get concessions, and then he ended up with worse deal than he could have gotten from the beginning. So I think we're going through that process right now, but eventually U.S. will have to acquiesce to whatever Russian demand is for ending this war.
And do you think that when they do finally submit to Russia's demands, do you think that they will spin it and turn that loss into a victory to save face, to then position themselves to, because I don't, my personal opinion is this: if they pull out of this, it's egg over their faces and egg over NATO's faces, which I would prefer that over a nuclear war. But if they then pull out and go towards China, they will lose immediately. So don't you think that they have to do the same thing that they have done to Iran by picking off all of its strategic allies, and that before they take on Iran, which means that when we're looking at China, let us take out Iran to get to China, because we can knock out the land route that is proposed to go through there for the Belt and Road Initiative. Don't you think that they would attack Iran first before going after China openly?
Well, right now, just as we're talking, there's already news coming out that Israel is threatening a strike on Iranian facilities, and they again, this is there's a strong force inside Washington that is specifically the pro-Israel lobby. They really want this war with Iran. This is Israel's priority, to have war with Iran. And Israel also know itself alone cannot prosecute this war with Iran. They need a United States. So they are, I think that right now they're working kind of in cahoots with U.S. because Trump also wanted to use Israel to pressure Iran to accept a nuclear deal. It's like, okay, we're barely holding the leash of Netanyahu here. We can't really hold him any longer if you don't sign the deal. He's a mad dog. We might let loose any time. I mean, that's what he's doing. United States cannot afford to go to war with Iran. I mean, we have seen what happened when U.S. carried out campaign against Yemenis. I mean, the U.S. Navy lost 3 F-18s against a country with no air force and no air defenses. I mean, how are they going to? And now they pull out of Red Sea. How are they going to expect to carry a war with Iran, much less China, in that kind of conditions? I mean, it's kind of, Iran is not Iraq. I mean, Iran is much more populous, much more powerful than Saddam's Iraq. And the whole Iraq war business, they have, even the Washington elite has come to realize that has been a tremendous drain on the U.S. power, and Iran, the war on Iran will be like 10-20 times worse than that. So I don't think they necessarily have appetite for Iran. However, the Israeli lobby in Washington is really pushing for this, because Israel really want a war with Iran. Right now, Netanyahu is also facing very strong domestic opposition at home. For him to save his own ass is to carry on the war forever, so he can remain the war president. And right now, we're gonna have to see, because there is a spin right now saying, Trump is going to make a break with Israel, blah blah blah. I don't buy that. No American president is going to be able to make a clean break with Israel. So we're going to have to see how that plans out. But I think there are people, even the people in Pentagon, who are resisting this push for a war with Iran. But there's a strong push from all the Israeli supporters in Congress, in the establishment, that they wanted U.S. to do this war against Iran for Israel. So we're gonna have to see how that play out. But first, U.S. got to extricate itself from Ukraine, because the whole Ukraine war has depleted all the U.S. and NATO arsenals. They have been stockpiling for conflict with people like China, and they right now they're not going to have enough ammunition available, even if they want to go to war with Iran, because the amount of ammunition consumption in Ukraine war is insane. That's because that's a real 21st century modern war, and they don't have U.S. and NATO countries. They don't have the industrial base right now to carry on a two-front war at this point. So first they have to get out of Ukraine, and then let's see if Israel is going to get its way. We'll probably see in the next few days whether Israel carry out this threat of attack against Iran.
I think Israel really wants the war with Iran, but I think America wants it more, because I think in their eyes, Iran, if we can take out Iran, we can weaken China's strategic depth. And if we can weaken China's strategic depth and we can take Iran, we have the land routes. Then we can try to embargo them through the Malacca Straits, and then we can use the second island chain to block them in and to try to hem in the Chinese economy to stop this breakout capacity. I do believe that, and I believe that more so than Israel won Iran. I think it is the think tanks in the United States, because that is one of the linchpins to their grand strategy of going after China, weakening China. But Capo Sid says this, and I have some kind of agreement with this. He says, I think America wanted to weaken Pakistan using India and then go through Pakistan to attack China too. I think America is just she's trying to set the whole world ablaze so that she can make order out of chaos in her manner. And whomsoever it may be, whether it's an ally or an enemy, if the thing presents itself, then they're going to take advantage of it. And I'm glad that Capo put this up here, because that gives us our transition to China's performing weapons. I mean, the weapons showed themselves. A lot of people don't know that the Israeli attack on Iran, when Iran's air defenses were knocking down the missiles, a lot of those were Chinese air defense systems. But, more people thought that they were Russian. But I saw that some of those that were protecting the strategic areas were Chinese air defense systems. So I want to read something to you, because it seems like the leadership of India is so captivated by wanting to be accepted by the West that sometimes they let reality that and their hatred or their animosity towards China cloud their vision and their view on things. So this comes out in the publication by the Mint. It says how Pakistan's imported HQ-9s and HQ-16s failed, but India's indigenous Ashketir proved its mettle and amid Operation Sindoor. And it says that every missile, listen, I'm not making this up, Carl. Every missile that Pakistan launched was knocked out of the air by the Indian indigenous defense systems and the S-400 systems. And yet video after video has shown us that when Pakistan struck, Pakistan hit strategic areas using the missile that I had been telling people on this Chinese missile is outrageous. This That's P-15. It's outrageous. So what is your thought on this?
I mean, Indian media is on a whole nother planet at this point. They are reporting on the first day how many Pakistani planes got shot down by the Indian Air Force. How many cities were destroyed by the Indian strikes. I mean, they're reporting a total bizarro universe, and but they know what they're doing. They're selling to their audience what their audience want to hear. And so they're getting the click of eyeballs, and they're still making money from the ads revenue. But that actually kind of created this kind of info bubble, the disinfo bubble, for the Indian public, because like if you read news reporting inside India versus outside India, you get a two quite different view. This is why I can't take Indian media seriously anymore. A lot of them is just going for pure sensationalism to sell the news, to sell to grab eyeballs. They have no regard for journalistic integrity or truth telling or any of that. But I think India is an interesting case because prior to this, India was on the outs with the United States because U.S., Canada, they have been going after India for supposedly carrying out assassination attempt against Canadian and U.S. citizens, and they have been really pressuring hard on India for keep on buying Russian oil. So India was under tremendous pressure, and after that, India actually made some reconciliatory gesture toward China. Like China and India was moving closer again during that period. But that all changed when Trump launched the tariff war. And that's when India thought they could capitalize this to at least get some U.S. multinational to move their supply chain from China to India. That's why the Indian Commerce Minister, they immediately said, "Oh, we'll comply with everything. We will go to Washington first. We're going to negotiate the deal, and they agreed to lower the tariff to American products." And they give Trump this great wing, and to further suck up to the U.S., they announced further ban on Chinese goods into India, right? So that kind of put a cap on this gradually warming up Sino-Indian relationship. And then, then as we all know, J.D. Vance went to India right after he met with the previous pope, and then the Kashmir attack happened. And this is, the timing is interesting. I'm not saying it's J.D. Vance, okay? I'm not saying J.D. Vance killed the pope or he caused a Kashmir attack, but the timing is interesting because this is the time when India and China was moving together because the pressure United States was put on India. And then with the tariff, J.D. Vance visit to India, and suddenly India is again pivoting toward United States, leaning toward United States. And then they use this occasion, they decide to launch this attack on Pakistan. And this is everyone. To outside observers, this is obvious. It's a political move. The Indian government is carrying out the strike against Pakistan because they want, one hand, they want to satisfy the cry for revenge from the Indian public, and two, they just wanted a chance to take down Pakistan a peg. And this is because there's little love lost between India and Pakistan to begin with. And this further kind of pivot India toward, reorient India toward Washington, because Pakistan, has been very closely allied with China. One of the biggest Belt and Road Initiative project is this China-Pakistan economic corridor, where China is trying to build up the infrastructure in Pakistan, but particularly they want to build the energy corridor so Persian Gulf gas and oil can be piped from the port of Gwadar and all the way across Pakistan through Western China. And that's something neither India wants to see nor Washington wants to see. So on this point, India is lying with Washington. They don't want Pakistan to stabilize, to become to develop economically with China's help. And Washington don't want this China's alternative to create a Malacca, basically. So the oil and gas will no longer have to sail through the Strait Malacca. They just go straight from Persian Gulf to Gwadar, which is very close to the Gulf, and then get piped to China. So in this area, U.S. and India is aligned. So it's under these circumstances that India launches the attack. But again, they launch it. I have to say, this was it's a political decision, and it was done in such a way that they're kind of the Operation Sindoor was kind of doomed from the beginning, because they decided to launch the so-called against so-called ground target, the so-called terrorist camp inside Pakistan. So they decided not to strike against Pakistani military installations because they don't want to escalate into a wider war. And so they decide, okay, we'll just attack what we call the terrorist camps. But India is not Israel or United States. They're not fighting an opponent without an air force or air defense system, right? So if they did not take out the Pakistani air defense system, and they decide they're going to go in, so they thought, okay, we can do this by launching the strike inside our airspace. So now the Indian aircraft actually cross the border. They fire their missiles from inside Indian airspace. They thought, okay, if we just do that, we'll do a surgical strike. We announce to our public we scored a great victory, and it will boost the support for our government. And the problem is they have been telegraphing the planned attack way in advance. So the Pakistan was ready for them. Pakistan Air Force have been increasing the patrol along the border. They were on high alert for several days before the attack began. So when the Indian Air Force carried out the Operation Sindoor, the Pakistani Air Force was ready for them. The Pakistan radar, their AWACS, the air warning system planes have already picked up all the movement of the Indian fighters scrambling, ready to strike, and they waited for the Indian jet fighter to launch their missiles to strike the target inside Pakistan. Then the Pakistan AWACS planes, or maybe their ground radars as well, they transmitted the target to the Pakistan's Chinese-made J-10C fighter jet, and the fighter jets received the coordinate and they just launched their PL-50 missiles. I mean, this is like the real 21st century aerial combat. According to the Pakistani Defense Ministry, more than 100 aircraft was involved on both sides. So this will make it the largest aerial battle in the 21st century. And the Indian Air Force were equipped to carry out the ground strikes. The Pakistani Air Force are waiting for those Indian jets to lay out a trap, an ambush, and this happened when neither side could see each other. The missiles were fired outside of the visual range. They just saw a blip on the radar, they fired the missile, and the Indians' fancy French Rafale jets got shut down. And this is because, from the very beginning, India made a political decision to strike the ground targets, but not the Pakistani air defense or military installation. And they broadcast their intent for so long, the Pakistani were ready for them. And on top of that, Pakistan just have a better system integration, because they're using not just the J-10 fighter or the PL-15, they're also integrating their ground radar and their airborne early warning system planes, AWACS planes. They all work seamlessly together. The AWACS planes can pick out the position of the Indian jets before the Indian jets could see them, because they have a much wider range. And once they pick out those targets, they transmit the coordinates to the J-10C planes, because apparently they have the software that have the link up between the J-10C and the AWACS planes. So the J-10C, they didn't even have to see the Indian plane. They could receive their targets directly from the AWACS planes. And then once it receives the targets, the pilot can just press a button and boom. And the PL-15, they have the export version. They have a range of like 145 kilometers. And next thing we know there at least one confirmed a shutdown of the French Rafale jets, which is the most advanced European fighter jet. And this is again, this is the first blood for the Chinese weapon system. You know, before this, people say, "Oh, they're made in China. It's probably shoddy products." You know, Chinese missiles are full of water. You know, like, but this is undeniable now. It works. It works. It has been proven in battle against the most advanced European fighter jets, and this is this again. This just kind of shift India further into the camp of Washington, and I think this works out very nicely for United States, because before it was United States that kind of pushed India away. So India was like trying to make peace with China, but now India is fully back into the Washington camp again, and this is how, you know, Washington is basically trying to sabotage the BRICS from within, because India is a BRICS member, right? And India has a veto power over new entrants, new applicants into BRICS, and they have exercised that power many times, and so it all works out. I mean, the winner of this is United States and also Chinese weapon systems, because that has been proven. And now Egypt is going to order J-10 planes from China, because the French Rafale jets, they cost more than $120 million per pop. And India actually spent more. 10 days before the conflict, India had announced they're going to acquire 26 additional Rafale jets from France at $7.4 billion with a B. So that comes to like about $284 million per plane. That includes spare parts and pilot training. But guess what? The Chinese J-10C plane, the unit cost is like $40 to $50 million. So you can get like five. You can get like 5 J-10C for each Rafale jet. And on top of that, one of the reasons that Pakistani pilots were able to execute this flawlessly is because once J-10C were conducted into Pakistani Air Force service around 2022, but since then they were able to conduct joint military exercises with the Chinese Air Force. You know, in 2023, the two sides conducted joint exercise where the Pakistani 10C joined with the PLA Air Force. And I saw the videos. In the videos, they actually show the AWACS plane take off. So they train for this kind of battle. They train where the AWACS plane will pick out the target, transmit the target to J-10C for J-10C to strike. And the Pakistani pilots, they just carry out what they train for. But whereas India, they're not getting hands-on training from the French pilot. They're not getting the joint exercise with the French Air Force. You know, they may have some joint exercise with U.S. NATO Air Force during those exercise Malabar that holds once every few years, but they're not getting the same kind of joint exercise that Pakistan was able to get directly from Chinese PLA Air Force. So this is the difference. The difference is system integration and training, and this is where Pakistan was able to come out ahead. But India is a large country. There are many voices inside India, but there's a sizable contingent inside India that advocate closer alignment with Washington. I mean, these include those big companies that act as that provide service for U.S. multinationals. I'm talking about Infosys. I'm talking about like all these Indian IT companies that that provide service for likes of Microsoft, for example, and these companies, and also Indian Americans, of course, also plays a role they try to push India into closer alignment with Washington, and they do have a lot of pull inside India. So this is where we are.
And this is what is being reported. You go to the Asia Times, it says humbled and humiliated. India should look beyond Modi. They're pissed now because of the operation didn't go the way that they planned it. And even though the Indian media is beating the drums that everything went the way it was planned, everybody else is coming out saying, no, this is not how it went. And here's another article. China's jets and missiles make Pakistan a winner over India. This is also on Asia Times. It said, then it says, Pakistan's downing of India's fighters signals shift in South Asia air power balance and China's arrival as an aerial warfare power. And then here from The Guardian in England or the UK, this is where we need to be at, this article right here. It says, Pakistan's use of J-10C jets and missiles exposes potency of Chinese weapons. And see, remember all before this, they were those are unproven. Those the Chinese just steal technology and just copy. And now they're saying that the radars outsee and the missiles outgun the hegemons of the West. And this is starting to wake up their eyes. And in the article it says, shooting down of India's planes by Beijing customers of Pakistan would mark the first time the fighters and their PL-15 missiles have been used in combat. As India and Pakistan traded missile strikes over the weekend, and the world watched with horror as the two nuclear-armed neighbors erupted into open conflict, military analysts spotted something curious. Pakistan, it seemed, had used Chinese jets to shoot down India's planes. Now, it threw them for a loop, the effectiveness and just the because India also, let me make this point I wanted to make a second ago. India also said that they believe that China was using satellites to feed the images and real-time data to Pakistan, and this is why Pakistan downed the planes. But at the same time, they say no planes were down. So what, Carl? I mean, where is all this going, man?
I mean, the cope is pretty insane right now. On one hand, they're accusing China of providing all this military help to Pakistan through satellite intelligence and everything, radar intelligence, and on the other hand, they say, but the Chinese product is crap. You know, like we overwhelmed the Chinese air defense system. So then why are you complaining? You know, if the Chinese thing is crap, then you should ask Pakistan to purchase even more because that helps you. So why are you complaining about China helping Pakistan then? But so ignore the Indian media for a second. If you would look at what happened, Pakistan actually didn't deploy F-16s in this conflict. They have F-16s, but the reason is because when United States sold F-16s to Pakistan, it came with an end user agreement.
Yep.
that Pakistan must promise not to use those F-16s in a war against India, which severely limits the utility of these F-16s. What are you going to use the F-16 for then? You know, like you're just going to bomb Taliban's? I mean, like So this is why the Chinese J-10C and JF-17 were used. But that it goes to also show for the other air force, especially air force in the global south. If you sign a deal with United States is going to try to use the military cell, try to influence your foreign policy. Mm-hmm. They're going to try to set limit on how you can use those weapons. Whereas China, if you buy Chinese weapons, you get to train with the Chinese Air Force, and they're not going to dictate to you how you're going to use your weapons. You know, weapons that you pay for. And also remember when Pakistan first bought those F-16s back in the days, United States initially held those planes up for years before delivery. Yeah. You know, as a punishment for Pakistan's missile test. So you know, this does not factor in Chinese weapon sale. You know, Chinese don't care, you know, how you're going to use your weapons. China is not going to tell you how you're going to. They're not trying to tie the weapon sale to try to influence your foreign policy. So this is, and on top of that, it's going to be much cheaper, much cheaper than. And so this is why I think you'll make a persuasive case for air forces like Egypt, right? When they're looking to diversify their military suppliers. Like especially right now, everyone can see which way the wind is shifting. China is now the world's manufacturing superpower. And by the way, all the surprises that was expressed by the Western analysts, I mean, like, why are you shocked? Why would you be shocked that China, that makes everything else that you use, can also make decent weapons? I mean, like China made your iPhones, right? I mean, why do you think China couldn't make a defense? By the way, J-10C is not even top of the line in the Chinese arsenal, because the PLA Air Force is already stopped taking orders for new J-10C planes. Because they have moved on to J-20, the stealth fighter planes. That they're start mass producing them right now, and soon they're going to produce the next batch will be the J-35s, and in the 2030s they're hoping to bring to production their 6th generation fighter plane, which United States do not have yet, because the U.S. 6th generation fighter plane only exists in PowerPoint presentations.
Well, Carl, you know why they figured that the Chinese can't do it, because China is not a Western colonialistic nation, and it's hard for them to even fathom someone outside of the West being able to have technological independence, or to be able to come up with, when a lot of the Western stuff is not. They stole a lot of it, like American stealth planes that came from Germany. After the war. So it's just a lot that's going on. But I want to finish with on this article. I want to go back to this article because there is something in it that we should all be aware of. So as I was reading the article, it says Pakistan claimed to have shot down several Indian Air Force fighter jets with Chinese-made missiles fired from Chinese-made J-10C jets. The Pakistani foreign minister Ishaq Dar told Parliament that the Pakistani-flown fighters had taken down India's French-made Rafales. Dar said he had informed the Chinese and they were pleased. China's social media celebrated. The use of J-10Cs by Pakistan would mark the first time the Chinese planes and the PL-15 missiles they were carrying have been used in combat anywhere in the world, giving military analysts a rare glimpse of their capabilities and China's military, the PLA, a crucial test case. Any state producing or buying weapons is keen to see how the product does in real conflict. Tests and exercises can tell most about capabilities of weapons, but the ultimate test is often combat, said Simon Wiesman, a senior researcher at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. China is a crucial ally of Pakistan. Sapri estimates that it is Pakistan's biggest military weapon supplier, providing more than 80% of its stocks from fighter jets to Navy vessels and missiles. Andrew Small, a Berlin, and we're getting to it. Andrew Small, a Berlin-based senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund, said China gets particular benefit from seeing its weapons used against Western equivalents. It gives them a chance to assess their performance under far more complex, challenging conditions than usual. And with Pakistan, this is not just about the fighter jets themselves. It's about the missiles, the radar system, and the whole technology spine of the Pakistani military, from electronic warfare capabilities to satellite systems. It's not just Western arms that China's planes are being tested against. India has the support of both China's biggest rivals, the U.S., and its closest ally, Russia, which supplies 36% of India's armed imports. But analysts say it has provided a wake-up call about China's military capabilities as it threatens to annex Taiwan. Taiwan is already a part of China. Well, that's something else to be said, but this is what I was getting at. It's when this took place, the West they had to rewrite the script. But first they were talking about India was succeeding. They flipped the script the following day when more pictures and more videos were coming out. I think it stunned them to see the effectiveness of what they call the copycat nations weapons against the so-called Western analogs. What do you say about that, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, like, can you imagine if United, because I think U.S. is also now they're going to try to use this opportunity to push F-35s, to India. But can you imagine if at some point Pakistan get their hands on the Chinese J-35 and India get F-35, and then J-35 shoot down F-35? That would be really embarrassing for United States. I mean, they can't even because all these, the biggest copium, right? It's like, oh, China, they just copycat. J-10s is just a copycat of F-16. J-35 is just a copycat of F-35. But what if the J-35 actually shoot down F-35? Then what kind of copium are you going to come up with that one? Right now, that's a real possibility, by the way, because right now, one most capable fighter in the U.S. arsenal is F-22, but United States is already not making any more F-22s, whereas the Chinese J-20, they're getting mass produced. I'm not even gonna talk about F-35. That's a big boondoggle. That's a money making scheme, right? That's not designed for fighting wars. F-35 is best known as a versatile fighter jet that can double up as a submarine in the bottom of the ocean. But the right now, if they're going to have to face a real capable peer competitor, they're going to be in trouble, because for even though United States have $1 trillion official Pentagon budget, even though the real budget is actually much higher than that, you still cannot win war against Yemen. Right, you lose 3 F-18s in a war against Yemen. You think you have a chance against China? It's fantasy. U.S. was losing shit. It was getting ships damaged, getting rammed in South China Sea without even a conflict. They're destroying their own warships in South China Sea without even a conflict situation. You think they have what it takes to actually go head to toe with China? I mean, it's fantasy. Or even the U.S. commander, the U.S. admiral of the Pacific Fleet realizes. He already said, all the in a war, in a sustained war, all the U.S. bases in Okinawa and it will be gone. He will not be able to hope to keep those bases, because they'll be bombarded by Chinese missile barrages. And then how are you going to bring enough forces to the theater to have a numerical superiority when China is just going to be fighting from its home? China is not even like leaving. China don't have to leave mainland China to fight you, because they can launch their fighter from their air bases inside China. They can launch their missiles from inside China. They don't even have to leave to fight a war, say, in the Taiwan Strait. Whereas the U.S. have to cross the entire Pacific to confront China. This is a problem that U.S. didn't have to face for a long time after World War II. After U.S. victory against Japan, they didn't have to confront this problem for a long time. During Vietnam Wars, the whole entire South China Sea was basically American lake. You got surrounded by American naval bases in the Philippines, in South Vietnam, and right now, U.S. is reduced to do like so-called freedom of navigation patrols, but in a lot of these American thinkers, think tankers' mind, they're still fighting the last war. They think the fight with China is going to be a replay of Pacific War, right? This is just going to be Pacific War 2.0. They're going to do island hopping. They're going to, choke off the Chinese supply lines, and they're going to win. But what they don't realize is the fundamental power balance has shifted. China now produces everything. They're the manufacturing power. United, in terms of Pentagon itself admits that China has 200 times the shipbuilding capability than the United States. So we're talking about it's going to be Pacific War, except the position reverse. Now, United States is going to be Japan 1941. China will be in the position of United States in 1941 because that's a real power differential right now. And a lot of people are still in the denial phase of the 5-step grieving process of losing the American hegemony. Right? They're still in the first phase, denial. But it's I think we're gonna be stuck in denial for a long time, actually. But this is it's gonna be harder and harder to kind of ignore, to be stuck in that denial phase. When you see, China is mass producing its J-20, their J-35 are going to be in service soon, and then their their 6th generation fighter will be in service by the 2030s. And by the way, this is another reason I say there's probably not going to be a war in Taiwan Strait in 2027, because why would China launch a war in 2027 when they can just wait until 2030s when they will have the 6th generation fighter and US doesn't, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Every year that goes by, the relative position of China gets stronger. It doesn't. Time is on China's side. They don't need to rush the issue. That's all I always maintain. It's the United States they're putting out that 2027 timeline because they realize after 2027, it's going to be kind of hopeless for United States to hope to contain China. After 2030s, it's forget about it. Chinese economy will be too big. Chinese manufacturing power will be too big. And you talk about embargoes. Trump, we just had the trial run, Rashid. You often ask me, Rashid, what would United States do if China just stop sending the goods? Well, Trump found out for us. Trump went ahead and imposed a self-embargo. and 1 month, barely a month went by, and Trump caved. And but if you are cynical, you could say maybe that's a stress test, right? Maybe it's a stress test. They want to see how much pain the American public can take before pull back from the brink. Because if that tariff war had gone any longer, man, that we're gonna have shortages. We're gonna have serious empty shelves in the supermarket. But this is. Yeah, I mean, that. This is why I don't think embargo on China will be realistic. Unless they are braced for kind of a really dire situation. We just had an embargo and people are all panicking.
Let me play. I played the clip the last time you and I were doing the show. I want to play this clip again. This is Jack Ma.
Jack Ma, so he created Alibaba, which is the Amazon of Asia. He sees it clear as day. For 3 decades, the United States corporations raked in obscene amount of cash. So let's listen to Jack Ma. Let's listen to what he says.
We just want to control the IP. We just want to technology.
So he's saying that's what the United States said. We just want to control the technology and the IP.
Want the brand to leave the lower end jobs for the world. Great strategy. Past 30 years, IBM, Cisco, Microsoft, they made tons of money. The profit they made are much more than the 4 largest banks in China. But where the money?
So the American corporations made tons of cash, made way more money than all the banks in China. Where'd all that money go? Where'd it go?
There you go. Past 30 years, the American had 13 wars, spending $14.2 trillion. The money going there. What if they spend a part of that money on building up the infrastructure, helping the white collars and the blue collars? No matter how strategy good it is, you're supposed to spend money on your own people. And the other money, which I'm curious about, is that when I was young, I heard America is about Ford and Boeing, those big manufacturing companies. The last 10, 20 years, I heard about is Silicon Valley and Wall Street.
That's it.
The money go to the Wall Street. And what happened? Year 2008. The financial crisis wiped out $19.2 trillion USA alone. They wiped out all the white collars and destroyed 34 million jobs globally. So what if the money, it's not Wall Street, what if the money spent on the Middle East, Middle West of the United States, developing the industry there, that could be changed a lot. So it's not the other countries steal jobs from you guys. It is your strategy.
So this was America's strategy. China didn't steal our jobs. This was American corporations' big idea. It wasn't China's idea that America would take our manufacturing and send it to them. That was our idea. Why? Because it would increase corporate profits, because they could make their products cheaper. And then the corporations could get richer, and then they could buy jets, and they could buy yachts, and they could buy golf courses. But they didn't invest any of that money back in the Midwest. They put all that money into that stuff, or they put it into bombs for the Middle East.
I had to put that up there because I know YouTube starts tripping from time to time. So the fair use, because we're using clips for educational purposes and not for anything other than. But what is your take on what Jack Ma said? Because to me, he hit the nail on the head multiple times.
Well, there's a lot of copium in U.S. People are saying, "Oh, we built China up. If it wasn't for United States, China wouldn't get to where it is today. We built up China's wealth." And to that answer, well, that's great. Then why can't you build your cities like China in the United States? If you build China, why not build a China in the United States? Right? Simple. Just do that, and then you won't have all these problems. United States actually, when they talk about the trade deficit with China, they are looking at the import-export number that's leaving the custom and entering the custom. But they're not counting billions of profit that U.S. companies are making in China. GM from 2003 to 2023, they sold more cars in China than they sold in the United States. But those cars, because they're made in the GM factories in China and sold directly to the Chinese consumers, those profit was not counted towards the trade deficit because they never left the Chinese custom to come to the United States. But all the profit went to GM. What did GM do with this profit, right? And same with Apple. Apple make about $70 billion every year from selling iPhones and Apple products in China to the Chinese consumers. That, again, is not reflected in the trade figure because those iPhone went through straight from the iPhone factories in China to iPhone stores in China and into the hands of Chinese consumers. So they never left the Chinese custom to come to the United States. But again, most of that profit went to Apple. What did Apple do with that profit, right? And the problem in the United States is a distribution problem. All these multinationals, they're making tons of money in China. They're raking it in China. But all this money, they're not taking this money to reinvest inside the United States. Those money are not being reinvested in education, in building up infrastructure. Because they just don't care. For them, the bottom line is it's all important. For them, it's a profit margin. It's the shareholder of Apple, the CEOs, the top executives, the shareholders of Apple and GM. It's those people who benefited, not your average Joe six-pack in Michigan. So again, that is a problem. It's a distribution problem, right? But that's a problem that's going to make worse when the U.S. government in the 2008 financial crisis, they decide to use all our money to bail out the big banks and big businesses, right? Again, socialism for the rich, and then capitalism for the poor. And so that is a U.S. problem. It's a very unique U.S. problem, and that's what the system is designed to do. And Jack Ma is right. U.S. They just spend a fraction of the money that's spent on wars, and you invest in education, invest in infrastructure, invest in industries in the United States, we would not be in this mess we are right now. Trump. This is why one Chinese academic, Zhang Weiwei, I think from Fudan University, he said Trump actually understands a lot of these problems that's facing the United States. Except his solution to this problem only make the problem even worse, because he think, oh, I'll just put in tariffs. It's gonna be like a magic pill, all right? It's like how they sell those magic diet pills, right? It just takes the diet pill. You're gonna get wash more stomach like Brad Pitt, right? And it doesn't work that way. The tariff will only work if you actually have a manufacturing in place. That will benefit your manufacturing. But it's not going to work if you don't have manufacturing, and you're going to have to build it back from ground up. And that's going to take years. And in the meantime, you're just going to have shortages. You're just doing a self-embargo, essentially. So, and what he did, all these disruption toward trade, big businesses like Walmart, Amazon, they can withstand the couple month disruption, not a problem. But it's a small, medium business of the United States that's getting wiped out. Again, it's rich getting richer, the poor getting poor. And that's the essential crux of the problem in the United States. But Trump is not going to tackle that, because that would be socialism. We can't have that. We can only have socialism for the rich. We cannot have socialism for all, right?
So this is what, with that being said, this is what Richard Wolff had to say about what we're now seeing unfolded in the United States. And then after he said, I know we'll bring it to a close, but I want to get your take on this, because some of this is dead on. This is what he says.
I want to begin by telling you that partly what I'm going to say is going to upset you. And so I want you to remember that I'm just the messenger. I didn't make these things happen, but I do want to honestly tell you, if you would like a much more comfortable version of this, then just turn on your television or radio whenever you have a free moment on the toilet, and you can hear the make-believe. Because we live now in a weird time, weirder and in different ways from what we were used to. This country is, as Dr. Leon pointed out, we live in a time of decline. And then when an empire declines, which is something we hadn't gone through because empires don't decline very often. But let me tell you, from the history books, a little bit we can tell, it's not fun to be in a declining empire. Much more fun when the empire is going up, which was the last century or a century and a half of this country, the ride up. We are now on the ride down. We haven't been prepared because we have leaders who cannot say a word about that. I want to just drive that home, because the split in this country is really about that.
So what do you have to say about that, Carl? Because to me, he's right. He's right on the money with what he said.
100%. I mean, I have no disagreement with that. U.S. is in a managed. I mean, okay, so U.S. is in decline, but it could be a managed decline. It could be decline gracefully into the sunset. But what people like Trump is doing, they're Trump is my president for accelerationism. He makes the decline go much faster. And right now, a lot of people are still in denial about the decline, about the imperial decline. They still think, Elon Musk is gonna pull us out with his with a Tesla and SpaceX. And we are, but that's the way it is. The U.S. it's in a structural decline. It's in a secular decline. It's not this process. I mean, it's not the process could not be reversed or stopped, but nobody is doing anything in a way that's to reverse the process. If anything, Trump is accelerating the process to where we're not just declining, we're just falling through the cliff. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Well, Carl, I've had you on for over an hour and a half, man. I want to thank you for joining me on the podcast. You know I got to bring you back for episode 17 so we can talk again. From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me again, Rashid. Anytime.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Listen, I want to give a few announcements out before you go. Tomorrow at noon, we'll be having former CIA analyst Larry Johnson on the program. And right now, we're trying to fit in Alex Craner. I don't know if he'll be able to come in tomorrow evening or whatever, but we're trying to get some things going. We have a few more guests coming on, and I want to just take the time out to thank each and every one of you for joining me on this show, because you didn't have to do it. Now, I say this always: treat others and do right by others, because treat others the way you would have them to treat you, not because it's the right, because somebody wants something from you, not because it's some accolades or applause or credit behind it. Do it because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching, remember, God Almighty is always watching. As my mom always said, he may sit high, but he looks low. On that note, know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, remember to stay righteous. And Mama, I miss you more than anything. I miss the coffee. I miss the laughs. I miss the calling in the morning. I miss the calling at night, but I'm going to represent you. And your baby boy still loves you more than life through eternity, trillions of times over, Mom. I love you. We out of here. Peace.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a